All right. Hello, everyone. It's been a while. Oh, my camera's a little... Let's center me a bit. There we go. That should be better. All right, it's been a while since I live streamed. Let me know that you can see me, hear me okay. I was on the YouTube chat just a minute ago, so it seemed like stuff was good there. So yeah, while you're letting me know that, let's get to the framework folder. And we definitely don't want to be on 8.x. So we probably want to git checkout 9.x. And let's do git pull upstream 9.x. Oops. All right, cool. We should have the latest, and let's go ahead and add my, that's not it. Let's add my key so I don't have to punch that in all the time. Okay, so if we do a git status, we are up to date with upstream 9.x. So upstream is Laravel's framework, so that's out there. That means we should have the latest. We should be ready to contribute to the framework. So let me just go ahead and check out a branch, and then I'll talk about what I'm trying to build. So let's do, we'll just call this date comparisons. Cool. Well, you know what? I don't like that. Let's do git branch dash m relative date methods. Let's try that. Yeah, okay, I like that much better. All right, let's go talk about what I want to make. So if we look at the builder, I was actually, if you follow me on Twitter, you probably saw I was talking about kind of just doing a little research on how this is built. And I think where null is kind of a good example. So let me just kind of jump in here and kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about. I'm really tired of having to write like where published at is greater than, you know, now, like to show, for example, in this case, posts that are published maybe in the future or something. And this kind of actually gets to my point. I totally typed that wrong. This should be published at is less than now. So let's say you have a publish at date in the future and it was scheduled. To the point, this just feels like really lengthy compared to some of the other cool methods like where null inside of Laravel's query builder. And on top of which, I don't know about other devs, but I am like super prone when it comes to date math to like always get it backwards. Like, I don't know, it's mind bending. Like it's super straightforward once I have it, but sometimes, as we saw, like when you're thinking about a date in the past and the current date and you're comparing it to a date, like everything's kind of spinning, right? Like if the date's in the future, then, you know, that operator swaps. It's just a little mind bending until you kind of land on it. And then it's like, oh yeah, duh. But for that split second there, it just messes me up. So I would love to see something like this, and you don't have to do any of that. So that's what I want to build today. So you can let me know in the chat what you think about that. There are other cool date methods out there, like, you know, where date or where day or year. So there's a precedence for like this before. So I'm hoping that devs will find this useful here for this kind of thing. So I'd like to build like a where past and a where future, and then of course like all the, you know, or counterparts of this. So or where future and or where not future and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's a lot of methods when you add one of these. So anyway, that's kind of what we're gonna build. I'm gonna model it off of where null, just because it's pretty straightforward what gets added here and kind of how this works. And then if we kind of scroll down and look at like or where null and or where not null and all that kind of stuff, they all really just call this underlying method. So anyway, I thought there was a date before and date after. Someone mentioned that too. I don't think there is, but even if there was, there are definitely validation rules for date before and date after, but I don't think there are query builder methods. But even if there were, you would still have to pass, now or whatever. I just want something where I say, this is the date column, and like, is it past or future? I don't have to think about the logic. I don't have to pass in now or some date that it's before or after. It's very readable, much like Carbon, right? Has like, here's a date, is it past? Yes or no, right? It just has these Boolean type methods. So again, I don't think that exists inside of Builder. It might, but even if it did, it really doesn't land exactly what I'm after, which is just like this total streamlined experience of, again, just simply being able to say where past, not necessarily where date before now, right? So anyway, let's start with the tests. So again, just kind of modeling off of where nulls, or test basic where nulls. Let's kind of borrow this section, and I'll just put it at the end of the nulls. Test array where not nulls. You can see how many different tests there are just for this. Okay, cool. Let's kind of start building this out. So let's just say test basic where past. All right. And it looks like they do, or where null. Okay, so test basic where past. Okay, so let's just kind of mimic this out. So we'll say get builder, great, select star from users where past. What can we say here? Where past for user. We'd probably change this up. We should say something like posts and where past published at. Let's just kind of keep our date, or publish at maybe. Anyway, select star from posts where published at, and then this would be greater than, or well, less than now, effectively, is what we're after. Now, actually, we probably don't want that, because that's going to be framework, or not framework. That's going to be database specific. I don't think now is cross compatible. So we would actually want to inject the current date. So that's going to be a little bit tricky. So we would say something like 2022-04. Yeah, you're right. Published at is pretty close to that. Let's just say that, and then we'll say something like, 11/23, 45 or something like that. Yeah, let's go back to published at. Now, how are we gonna inject that date into there? That's a little bit funky. Plus, ooh, this gets a little hairy, because like, what if they store their dates? Deeper down the rabbit hole we go. What if they store their dates like not UTC? I'm not sure the best way to compare that. Let's see if there's a precedent in here. Let's see if there's a precedent in here for messing with dates. So I don't even know what I'd begin to look for there. A dash. There's going to be a lot of those in this file. Maybe date. Let's just see. So they're doing date created at question mark. I'm just trying to see if there's anything in here where I can like snapshot the date. There's definitely going to be dates in here. This is a bit funky. The easiest thing to do would be to compare it. Oh, here we go. Here's some comparisons on the date. Do they pass those in? Yeah, it looks like they passed that in. It would be easier if we could use the underlying databases like date methods, you need to wrap it with date. Not necessarily, because you might want to be doing, it might be a date time column. So I don't really want to mess with the date column itself. I just kind of want to simply say like it's less than now. I'm not sure if it's best to do that with Laravel or to let the underlying database do it. So what I mean by that is, let's go back to where we were. Yeah. I'm not sure if I want that or something like that in the case of MySQL. I am not sure. That's difficult to know. I think I'd really much rather have this, personally. But I'm still trying to figure out, I don't think there's, and this might be why this method never existed, I don't think there's like a way in here where they punch out dates. Is carbon used in here? Yeah, it is. I'm curious if they do anything fancy with dates in the implementation. I didn't see anything in the test, but I'm wondering. Carbon period, so where between does something. Hey Adrian, hey Christoph, how's it going? I wonder, yeah, I think, yeah. Okay. Here we go, value date format, if it's a date time interface. Add date operator now, date interface. Yeah, but see again, that's if I pass in a value. I'm not gonna pass in a value to this method, so I have to like build my own and then dump it in there, which I can absolutely do this, but there's two challenges with that. One, we don't really know kind of like what time zone or I don't want to say format, but like we just don't know if there's any time zone information based on the date that's in the database, right? And then two, from a testing perspective, I don't know how I would kind of control that. Like, of course, there's set test now and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know if, it doesn't seem like Laravel uses, you know, any kind of date thing in here. So that's a little junky. That's kind of our first roadblock. So instead of playing with it, let's actually just kind of move forward and get this kind of working. And for now, maybe we'll just, let's make the decision. The decision is going to be probably to avoid MySQL and database flavors and just pass in a date. So 2022-04, yesterday, we'll just kind of put in, you know, 12/34/56. And we're gonna have to figure out a way to put that date in there. So we'll keep this down here, same thing. Posts where ID is question mark, that's fine. And then or published at is less than the same thing. So we'll just put in a similar date. And then we'll say or where past published at. So I think this is a pretty good test as far as everything we need to kind of do in there. Although I wonder if that is supposed to be this, or are we going to hard code that in some kind of way? That's the part I don't know. That's probably actually supposed to be a question mark, to be honest. I don't think we would hard write that SQL. Let's find out though. So let me fire up Docker and let's start running these and see what we're kind of getting at. Yeah, I think I must be confused where date. Yeah, yeah, they're validation rules. I don't think I don't think they exist. How do you like the board in the back? Oh, yeah, I haven't streamed in a while. The Vesta board. I'll do a demo here in a bit. Yeah, it totally sucks. It's a bad purchase, to be honest. I mean, I guess it's fun now that it's on the wall, but anyway, I don't want to derail the conversation. I'll do a quick demo for those that want to stick around at the end. But yeah, it's been kind of a bad experience. So the board itself is kind of cool, but the experience and the purchase and all that stuff, no good. Anyway, all right, we got Docker running now. So let's get into the framework here, and we'll go bin sh. Let's just use the little shift runner. That should be good enough. And then I probably am going to need to do composer install to get all the latest stuff for Laravel 9. That's going to take a second. So while that takes a second, let's go build this method a little bit, because we know we're going to see all those kind of errors here in a second. So I kind of want to mimic or where null, or where not null. I don't know why that's lower, but anyway, let's kind of put it with this date stuff, I guess. So let's borrow this, and we'll say or where, or well, where null is the one I kind of liked. So let's copy this. Let's go back to where did I just add that? There it is. All right. So let's leave this as a blatant to-do there so I don't forget. And all you're really going to pass in here is pretty much the same stuff we're passing it now. So we're going to leave that alone. And we're going to change this to where passed. And we won't have this be not null. So if type is not, okay, so passed would always be less than. And then if it's not passed, it would be greater than or equal. So if we're going to support like where not passed eventually, and again, we're going to write some tests for this, but I'm just kind of blindly jumping ahead here while Composer finishes installing, which it looks like it did. Okay, fair enough. So let's just slow back down then. I'll comment all this back out, and we'll say, where is this? Excuse me. We'll do that. Or well, I guess we can't do that, then type wouldn't be defined. So let's just do this for a second. And vendor bin PHP unit, and let's borrow this test. And let's filter. I've been having some issues with Docker lately, so I hope it behaves well, but let's filter test basic where passed. I think I need to upgrade the version or something. It's it does this, it just hangs. A lot of the times when I try to run tests, I'm not sure why it does that. But yeah, see, it becomes completely responsive when I run PHP unit. So let's try this just again. Okay, let's let that restart and we'll keep going back. For testing, you must pass the date from Carbon and not use SQL now. Yeah, I think that's the direction I'm kind of heading. I don't know how you arrived at must, but yeah, I think that's what I want to do. Is we need to kind of just set a date and send that in as the value. Like that's going to end up being, which we don't have it right now, but that's going to end up being like value. So to that point, there are additional things we're going to have to pass in here. So if we go look at like some of these other things, we need to pass in column type, I guess, although I don't know what type is. And we need to pass in operator and value. So we're definitely going to have to pass in operator and value. So let's do that. Let's go back to where we were. And again, I don't know where type comes from. So this is actually operator. I think we can probably lose type. And value, for now, is just going to be this hard-coded thing until we kind of figure out what we need to do. So let's do 2022, 04, Earth Day, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So for now, we're just going to kind of hard-code in our date until we figure out how to get around that. Now, again, I'm not exactly sure what comes back for type. I kind of don't think we need it. Let's go look at where. So let's go look at this. I don't think that a generic where, and again, we can model it after this where because there's really no, that's really what we're trying to do ultimately. So type is bitwise, type is JSON, Boolean, type is basic. So I guess we're probably just basic. Although I guess we could be a JSON Boolean value. Strange. Let's go with basic for now. We may, you know, the more I start writing this, the more I feel like we might just end up calling, like, return this where and then pass in, you know, the values that we kind of hard code based on the past and let it like rely on all that. I think we might delegate instead of trying to write our own method because there's so many little pieces to this. You know, I just was looking at that, like there's a JSON column there, you know, it kind of changes the comparison of it. I don't even know if you can compare a JSON column, so we'd have to figure that out too. I'm starting to see why this method never existed. There's a lot of little nuance to it. All right, let's keep going. Okay, cool. So we have select star from post where published at is less than whatever. But in this case, we have select star from post where published at is greater than or equal to question mark. So I think this is where we can fix our test a little bit because where past, this is going to need to be question mark, and then the bindings in this case would be the date that we just got rid of. So 2022, 04, what do we say? 20, and then 12, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, let's try that again. Hopefully Docker continues to play nice. Cool, okay, so for some reason we're getting greater than or equal to, so I probably just, again, have my date math wrong here. So, okay, yeah, if not is true, meaning we're gonna negate it, meaning it's not passed, then we would wanna be greater than or equal to the date. Otherwise, the default would be less than, meaning it's less than the date passed. So this should pass, but the or where should fail now. Although, nope, we don't have our little value. Our little value is not coming across. So expected and actual doesn't seem like we're passing in our operator correctly. This circuit bindings, 1235, okay, so something's wrong with our bindings. We're not binding the right thing. I'm here in the chat. Let me bring the chat window back up. I closed it for a minute. Docker is really slow on Mac OS. Okay, cool. So why are we not getting a binding? Here's this. So type column, Boolean, operator, and value. Value should come across. Why are we not getting a binding? Strange. Very strange. So that's coming across correctly. It's building the query correctly, but for some reason the bindings are empty. Why would the bindings be empty? Column, Boolean, operator value, type basic, operator value. Maybe it's not basic. Maybe it's a comparison. Maybe I did this wrong. Let's go look at, well, let's do this actually. Let's copy this out because we're not even looping over anything anyway. And let's actually return this where and pass in our columns, our operator, and our value. So let's delegate. Let's delegate and see if this comes out what we expect. Of course, if Docker isn't a jerk. Come on, Docker, don't be a jerk. All right, Docker's a jerk. Let's restart it one more time. Yeah, let's see if delegating actually ends up having us do the right thing. And if so, then it probably makes the most sense just to delegate to where, because again, if we look at this method while Docker's restarting, like there's a lot of different like pieces and nuance here. I mean, it checks, I mean, we should never really have to worry about these particular checks, and we should never really pass in a closure. But I do, kind of looking down here, I do see, you know, type basic. There's some things that it's doing underneath. It's testing for JSON columns. Again, I don't even know if you can compare like a JSON, part of the JSON structure underneath there. That's kind of interesting. So yeah. Type basic should work. If value is instance of expression, then add it and flatten the value. Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. I would have thought this would have been a little smoother, but nope. If you build it on your own, you need to call this add binding. Really? Okay. If you build it on your own, you need to call this add binding. All right, well, we can do that. If anyone has a JSON column that they could quickly test, I'm curious if, can you do a comparison on a part of that JSON data? For example, like, would you be able to compare, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a date, but I'm just wondering if you can compare an arbitrary thing like greater than a value for a part of that JSON column, like for a value within that JSON column, or I guess a column, what do they call it, a field maybe? Because if so, then we definitely would want to delegate to where. So call to undefined method or where passed. So it seems like sending it through to where actually does all the right stuff for us. So, Adrian, you might be right. We probably could still continue to build it ourselves with calling that add binding ourselves, which we can go back to. But if we also need to support JSON columns, comparing fields within JSON columns to be passed, you're in control that that's a date or whatever, then like, again, I don't know if that makes sense. I'm just trying to support as many things as possible. So if that's the case, then I think I'd rather delegate to where. If it's not the case that you could do something with a JSON column, then I might go back to just writing the method in line, and then we'll just add the value ourselves. So let's go ahead and build or where. Let's build these other methods out. Let's move a little quicker here, and we'll kind of we'll go from there. So let's do where null, or sorry, not where null, where passed. All right, and then I'm gonna leave all that stuff for now because, again, we may go back to using this particular type of method. So let's borrow this. Delegate is the way to go, but by delegating it, I theoretically am supporting everything that where supports. And again, that may not be something I want to do if you can't even compare a JSON column in that way, I wouldn't want to support some, you know, I don't want to create like a developer foot gun. So I want to limit this down, you know, if needed. So let's do where passed, and the operator comes in, and in this case, we really don't have any of that stuff. We would just say columns here, and the operator is or, and there is no value. So we would really just delegate to where passed, and this is where we can do like all the fun delegation. So these methods would actually end up moving a lot faster. So let's see if this passes again. Okay, so from post where ID equals question. Okay, so we need to clean up some of these things. So we're gonna pass in passed. That's good. So let's check our test. We should have or. This becomes a question mark, and we should have an additional piece of this array now. So we should say 1 is going to be the date. And I noticed that that was and. It was and not or. Ah. I think where we're not even using that. Yeah, we have to pass in Boolean too. Is that right? Fourth parameter? Yes, it is. Okay, cool. Let's try that again. Docker permitting. Oh man, look at that. You can only run it like 2 times, and then Docker craps out. It's terrible. All right, we'll run that again. Maybe where JSON contains. I don't know. I gotta be honest. I don't think it's possible. Let's see if I have a JSON column in here somewhere. I think I might. Oh wait, Docker's restarting. Crap. MySQL compare. Oh, I already had it. Value greater. I think I was looking at this before. How to work with JSON's columns. Where's this like a Stack Overflow? I don't want to change it. If we look at the actual code, do they have like a JSON? Where JSON contains. See, where JSON contains isn't right. That's just like a random. You're kind of just like a fuzzy search inside of there. I'm actually curious if you can take a field inside of that JSON and compare it using a greater than or less than. I don't know if you can. This where null had something where it messes with a JSON thing, so maybe you can. Yeah, here you go. This is what I'm talking about. Where you actually extract the items, and you can say like is not null, and JSON type JSON extract items. Wow, that's pretty dense. Is not equal to capital null. That's crazy. Oh, that's a string too, so you can actually have a null string. Huh. Yeah, see, I don't even know if it makes sense to support JSON. Let's see if this comes back up, and we'll at least try to see if that query actually executes. I think in Shift I think what has JSON data? I think some subscriptions do, maybe. Packages? Packages do. Of course there's no packages in here. Structure. Yeah, versions is JSON data. It doesn't really matter. The query would actually just explode if you can't do it or not. So I could just say something like where, let's kind of borrow this. We would say this, and what I'm trying to get at would be like versions, and then inside of versions it's like 9. You would say 9 is like greater than 1 or something. This isn't going to yield any results, but I'm curious if it actually even compiles. It does. but does it work, you know? I actually have to put like a piece of data in here. Let's just make this easy real quick. Let's just insert it. So ID is nothing. Name is testing. Versions is some JavaScript or JSON. So we'll just say something like, we'll just stick with our example, published at, and this would need to be, see, this isn't even, this would just be a string. I don't even think it would work to compare this, not without some really crazy stuff where like you cast that as something. Ugh, that starts to get really ugly. I don't think that's something I would support day one. So I'm kind of already saying no here. Let's just go for a second. And let's go back here. And let's see if we put that back in and we say published at. Okay. So it would, because it's just a string comparison, so it doesn't really matter. I wonder if you could say like less than 202204, like 20. Again, I don't even know if any of this makes any sense. Yeah. Let's change this to greater than. Change that to greater than. SQL data follows option. Okay. Strange. Yeah. I don't know if that's the date comparison that's happening intrinsically by the database is kind of what's working in this case. I think to extract a field, you would have to extract it and then cast it to a date, and then we don't even really know what kind of date you're storing. I would say that we probably should not support JSON out of the box. If someone a little more familiar with JSON fields and the different nuances between the database wants to like PR that later, then that's the way to go. But I think for me right now, that's just not a road I want to go down. I mean, it seems to be possible. I just, without JSON having like a first party date object though, you know, you can't just blindly compare that from a string perspective. Like it's just, that's not going to work. So anyway, let's see if our OR works. It does. Okay. So this all works by delegating it down to where, but again, we may not want to end up delegating it because we don't really want to support other things other than just straight columns. So I think now the last thing to figure out is how can we kind of tinker with Carbon here? So I think the thing to do would be something like Carbon now, and I don't see, this is where the PR could like get a little rejected. I don't know if it's legitimate inside of these tests to use Carbon, but anyway, we'll kind of go back and let's see if we can do something like Carbon set test now. Let's import Carbon. There's an str to data. Yeah. Again, there's a way to support all that if you really wanted to. But I think out of the box, what I'm trying to solve here is if you have a date time or a timestamp field, then you know this is a super easy method to use. Now, can you pass it the syntax of a JSON field? Absolutely, using the arrow thing as Ed just mentioned in the chat, or the arrow notation. But like, that's always going to be stored as a string, which means now you have to cast it. And if you're going to cast it, now you have to have all sorts of like database flavor knowledge of like, okay, well in MySQL, we're going to cast that to like a date time or whatever. I don't really want to go down that road today, personally. Someone smarter than me can figure that out. So, okay. Anyway, let's borrow this, take that, and set test now. Oh, actually, I think you have to pass in like a I think you have to pass in like an actual, no, you can parse it. It'll parse it. Okay, cool. So that parses that, so that's good. And so now basically if we were to format that as the value, it should come out clean the other side. But let's just see if we're a little farther along here. We should get an error because I'm passing in an object and not necessarily a formatted carbon string. So, but of course, Docker doesn't want to play nicely, so that's really effing cool. All right, let's close this down. So we're not going to support that today. So test where passed, that all works. And then we could say, we could also flip this and say test where not passed. And similarly, let's kind of break this up. So we would end up saying like greater than or equal to here, and greater than or equal to here. And here we can say not passed. We're just going to work ahead while Docker's being a jerk. And again, all these methods should be super simple to add because they really just delegate to this other kind of our original method. So here we say or where not passed, and here we would say not passed, and we would pass in true here to negate, to negate not. There we go, so not true, cool. And here we would say and then here we would say true. And we'll take this to where not passed. And you really don't do those things for this. We could go ahead and clean those methods up. Cool. All right, so this should end up working. Let's see if I can get back into Docker and we can actually run at least one or two tests here. So again, the expectation would be it passes, which is strange. Did we get rid of that string? Pretty sure we did. Yeah, we're using carbon now here. Sometimes when things headshot like that, I get a little nervous. So let's format it with ymd, and we would expect this to fail, of course, because it's not the same format. So I think it's getting auto-formatted. What's wrong with this? Undefined constant. No, you're wrong. Yeah, okay. So you can pass in the carbon object completely, and you don't, it's going to just do the right thing, but we probably should control this ourselves. So what is this? HIS, I think. Let's see if that passes. It does. Okay, so this is correct. We've got our other test now for test basic where not passed. Let's see if this works. And if it does, then I think for the super simple test case here, this does pass. Great. Okay, so I think for these super simple things, this actually works. So, two things. One, we probably won't end up supporting JSON out of the box. And so for those reasons, I don't think I want to delegate to where, because that would imply that you could pass that in. I don't know. What do we think? Let's end up the stream with a little chat. What do we think? Delegate to where, write a test that demonstrates that it does something with JSON. Now what it does may not be correct. Or do we limit the initial release of this method, or the initial PR of this method anyway, to really only support date columns specifically, not any kind of like JSON typed columns that may contain a date string within them. I'm personally leaning towards the latter, which would mean that I would want to go back in here and not delegate and actually wrap this and then add the stuff, and then I would write a test to demonstrate that you could pass multiple columns to where passed. But yeah, I don't know. Tell me what you think. And while you're telling me what you think, we'll do a demo of the Vesta board, since a couple people had asked about it. It'll probably be pretty loud on the stream, so let me scoot back so we can see it. Cool. Okay, so hopefully you can see everything here. I'll change it on the iPhone. It's got like a programmatic API. So if you've ever been in like an old school airport, you know, it's just the little flip board here, which is pretty cool, I think. That's why I bought it anyway. And it's got all sorts of different designs you can do. So like, let's just do like a really, really crazy like design here. This is it's probably gonna get loud for a second. So here we go. Send it from here. Should flip the board. Yay. So yeah, you can do all sorts of different designs on it and stuff. Again, I thought the programmatic API aspect of it was like super cool. I haven't messed with it yet, to be honest. But the reason I griped about it before was just that like two things about it that I kind of griped about it. One, it took like 6 months. Oh, go full screen. Okay, sorry. Let's go back. Let me fix that real quick. I think if I do this, I go full screen. No. How do I go full screen? There, I'm full screen. No, that's not the right camera. Where is full screen mode? Screen only, camera only. No. Show scenes window. I haven't done this in like a long while. I don't think I have a scene where it's just me anymore for camera only. That's strange. I don't know why I can't, I'm selecting one that says camera only, but it's not. Anyway, whatever. The point is like, yeah, it took like several months for them to ship it because of all the supply chain issues, so that kind of sucked. And then when I did get it, it actually didn't work. They had to send me like an additional part in the mail that I had to like install myself. I had to like schedule something with their support so they could watch me like install it, so I didn't like void the warranty. So it was a big fiasco to like set it all up. And then it still didn't even work with the new part. And on top of that, like they like didn't really even offer me any discounts or anything for all the trouble. Not even like a subscription to their like, I don't even know what the subscription was for, but they didn't even offer me like a free like upgrade of any kind. So I don't know. I thought for like such a high-end product, they could have done like a little bit better job, like making me feel like it was still a good purchase, because I could have just boxed it up and sent it back. But I kept it because again, I do want to get into like the programming of it. I thought it would be cool on the live streams, particularly to do a countdown or do like, or even just me while I'm working, like, you know, inspirational quotes like that were on there before. I could do like things like when there's like a shift sale or shift, like put the shift revenue on there at the end of the day. Like, I don't know, I thought it was cool. My daughter thinks it's cool too. She like stares there and watches as it flips all the boards. So whatever, in the end, hey, cool. But just not a great experience for such a high-end product. You know, it'd be like buying a Porsche and it comes with a dent, you know, like that's not very fun. Anyway, back to the stream, and then I'll get this PR submitted offline. Let's see what people say here. I say don't delegate just in case it doesn't get merged in. No sense adding JSON. Yeah, agreed. Delegate to where and ignore the JSON problem. Yeah, okay, so we're kind of split here. I got the JSON comparison working using where and an arrow, so you might be able to accidentally support JSON without supporting JSON if you were to delegate. Yeah, that's true. I mean, right now, again, we're passing in, so if you have an arrow in there, it's going to attempt to do some kind of comparison with JSON. Now, what that comparison ends up doing, or if it ends up proving to be logically accurate, really depends on your database and the type of data that you're storing, and that's the part that, you know, I don't know. I agree with Adrian. There's not a ton of downside to it. Okay, I would not add JSON. Oh, come on, we're like split here. I think rather than adding a JSON column support, where pass method should also expect a date. If no date is passed, then it should use now. That's a little different. I know a YouTuber that also has it, but it also broke down already once in like the first month. Yeah, again, kind of a cool idea if you're into the kind of, you know, the flipboardy programmatic, you know, thing. I just thought it was cool. It was like a cool like retro piece. I don't really have necessarily any art in the office, so I was pretty excited about it. Like it's a retro tech item, which is really cool to me. But yeah, just a bad experience. Okay, team don't delegate. I think what I'm going to do is not delegate, but in the PR, put some breadcrumbs out there for people that if they do feel that it should support the JSON column, then great. As far as being able to pass in a date, to me that defeats the purpose of this streamlined method. If you're going to pass in a date, then you're altering what past means, which is kind of weird. I think you'd be better off just going way back to the beginning and building one of those like where before and where after type methods, which would be very easy to do based on what you just saw in this stream. So if someone wants to build those things, that's great. At that point though, like you're really just losing an operator for calling the where itself, right? And that's kind of why this one it actually kills two operators, and I think for me that's what makes it worthy of a PR. The other one you're really just dropping greater than or less than, and yeah, you're getting a bit better, but it's not as much as it's not as helpful in my opinion as this. You're kind of with this one you're removing all the thought by being able to say past, future, today, whatever. So I'm going to build those things off stream, that is future and past, and I'll probably remove the delegation, which is pretty straightforward. We just won't call this, and instead I'm going to test all this out, but we'll do this, and then to Adrian's point, we'll probably need to say something like this, add binding, and pass in the value or whatever. And I guess the type is where. I don't really know what gets passed into add binding, but that seems to be accurate. So if Docker's still running and behaving correctly, let's see if this actually still plays on for us. It may or may not. Seems like Docker's a jerk, so I'll end the stream here. I'm gonna reinstall Docker and make sure I have all the latest versions. Okay, so, and then with that, I will reset this. So anyway, the point is I'm going to go back to this, which no longer delegates to where, which means I'm in full control, or this method is in full control of the columns and stuff that are passed in. And to Adrian's point, maybe I can add a check, but we'll start the discussion on the PR. And if Taylor or whoever says like, hey, yeah, you can support JSON columns in a limited way, then basically we just comment this back out. I'll add a test, and it potentially supports that so long as you know what values are in that JSON field. So I think that's a fair trade-off. So anyway, thanks for everyone joining live. Appreciate you all enjoying the demo. I'll get some of the kinks worked out as far as being able to go full screen for camera only. I have no idea why that didn't show up. But again, thanks for joining. See you all next time.